Okay, and the stuff and start again. Carbonated water. Okay, let's look at these ingredients. Carbonated water. This is good for you. Why is carbonated water good for you? Carbonated water can be good because it can help deliver oxygen to your lungs. Okay, the CO2. Sweetener. You'd have to look at some different things about sweetener, and then you gotta look at some things about acidity in your body. Specifically, stomach is a good place to start with that. Flavorings and colorants and caffeine. Okay, so here's some different medical things about these topics. I can show you the pros and cons. Okay, and then you can start to look at what is healthy about these choices and what is not healthy. Okay, and then we're going to separate everything into different parts and pieces so that you can decide how to handle things that you don't want anymore, so they're gone, and how to keep things that you want to keep. All right. Okay. Next. Well, we're going to start with something really basic, like carbonated water. Let's go to YouTube, and I'm going to show you Dr. Berg. Yep, started nice and easy and quickly. Dr. Berg, B-O-H-R. Let's see here. Okay, come over here, find Dr. Berg. Read some different things to study blood oxygen or any of these other topics that I mentioned. Carbonated water is a good place to start as well, and then you can find more about the Bohr effect and how it delivers CO2 to your how CO2 helps you deliver oxygen to your lung. Okay, and that helps you, get your oxygen and stuff, which is really nice. I love the feeling of breathing when I drink that water. Okay, another thing is I want you to think about the concept of thermogenesis. Oh, wait. First, carbonated water. Carbonated water. Let's look at some different carbonated waters. The better your water gets, the harder it is to carbonate. You can carbonate your own water at home. I tried this a long time ago. I don't use them anymore because I don't make my own carbonated water anymore. But they work pretty good. But if I use really good water, then this is a tough system to use. But if you're just using normal, like easy water to use, but not that delicious and not that healthy for you, or bottled water or things like that, then this will help you carbonate it satisfactorily. All right. It's called SodaStream, and you can look it up online. Okay. Next is some famous waters are San Pellegrino and Perrier are the best ones. So look at some pictures of the water. You can get like this at the Canadian dollar store for like a buckish, about $1. Okay. San Pellegrino is a really famous one because world famous, and so is Perrier, and they have the best nutrient quality and the best quality of water. So first of all, the water is really good, and they have great nutrition inside the water. Plus, it's very high quality, and this one's bottled in glass compared to plastic. Glass compared to plastic, but they will also do some plastic versions. So the better ones is the glass ones. And they keep the price down to something really relatively achievable compared to other things, but it's quite expensive to buy the water. Okay. For example, I might move to this one because I'm used to spending so much money on my home system that I'm kind of like, it's kind of the same price. I could actually probably get it for the same price or cheaper to buy it bottled anywhere in the world at this point. Okay. So kind of into that idea. All right. And so I'm going to move that a bit later, maybe in the next few months, but not right away. Okay, I got to prepare and plan and stuff like that. I usually use Culligan water. If you're in Canada, North America, I think they're around, not only Canada, but USA too. But they are the best, and they will give you some really, really amazing stuff. Okay, you go with them, you really win. They can do home systems. They can also do delivery. They have great prices compared to what you think, but it's expensive and way better than drinking water at home. Okay. You can also look at Dr. Berg and Dr. Kimberry stuff, see what you can find. Dr. Berg, especially, I know, has lots of great stuff about how bad tap water is. Let's look at tap water. Okay. So you start thinking, what is the quality of the water in your soft drinks, or in you, for that matter. Think twice about drinking tap water. Yes, definitely. I mean, you're gonna go to have a great future if you stop drinking tap water right now. Okay. You can prove semantically that your tap water is the same and as good, because you use the correct water but you ran it through your tap, then, good on ya. Okay. Next, hydration. Okay, think about hydration. Is your water hydrating you? Well, think of this thing. What is hydration? Hydration is two things, and you're gonna think about this regarding the sweetener. Okay, in a minute here. Hydration. What is hydration? What is hydration? All right. Hydration, the process of causing something to absorb water. Okay. What is hydrating fluid? For humans. Okay, so hydrating fluid for humans are any liquids that contribute to the body's water needs, primarily water itself, but also, oh, that is awful. Milk, low-fat juice, herbal teas? No way. Or herbal teas maybe have caffeine, so that's not a diuretic. Anyway. Okay, so no. Now, this is AI bad. Your AI is doing something bad to you, okay? I'll tell you right now, I'm an AI analyst. I'll give this one to you. I'll show you my resume. This is my video resume, right? And this is something I lost money for with AI. It took me off the project, straight up. I got removed from the project and I was put on a new one because I was facing a retarded review panel who I never met. But anyway, I want to show you. I'm not that amazing in terms of my career, but okay, let's see here. Outlier Artificial Intelligence. They pay me still though. Thank you, Outlier. They are amazing in many ways, but that one was no. That was not amazing. For sure. Let's see here. AI Rating Evaluator. So, regardless of how much I've done for them, you can understand that they do have some mistakes that they make. So I want to show you that they made an error with hydration. Okay, milk has sugar, so it's going to dehydrate you. Hydrating fluid is electrolytes plus water, and if you drink milk, then it's not hydrating you because you're taking things with sugar in it. Sugar is not. Milk is not really that natural to any mammal, except humans drink it for some reason after they become adults. Juice is also not hydrating fluid because of the sugar. What you need for hydrating fluid is not things with sugar, because hydrating fluid is water plus electrolytes. Things like coffee and tea also are not hydrating fluid, even though the Google AI is showing that it's possible to use that in moderation with hydration. Unfortunately, no, it's diuretic, and so it cannot be used. If you want to use coffee, you'd have to use decaffeinated coffee, like Swiss process. But the problem is that coffee also has tannins, and tea also has tannins. So if you're repleting your electrolytes and water, which is hydration, you're going to also have the issue that you need more benfotiamine or B1 thiamine for the production. What's happening in your body when you use the potassium, for example. And these kinds of resources also deplete your B1. They expand the microbiome, as I mentioned earlier. And when you expand your microbiome, it stops feeding you those vitamins, and it starts to overconsume them. So it becomes kind of a negatory balance away from your favor. So when you go for the component in any soft drink that is a sweetener, regardless of the kind of sweetener you're looking for, you have to remember one basic fact, which is that it has directly to do with your hydrating fluid, not only because of the sugar content, but because the craving of sweetness itself is a potassium deficiency, and it's corrected by potassium intake on a regular basis. Insofar as that intake is satisfactory, you won't crave anything sweet. But that's not the same as saying sugar. And if you want to start thinking about sweetness in contrast to other foods than potassium or other intake than potassium, you're going to need to compare different kinds of sweetener. First, the reason why is that a lot of kinds of sweetener have electrolyte depleters, things that deplete potassium, carbohydrates, for example. And you can look at a range of resources that would be more depleting than others in any of your soft drink ingredients or other kind of sweet drink ingredients. So, for example, you can get familiar with the glycemic index. And that'll help you understand the amount of reactivity you're going to get glycemically. So, like regarding your hormones, insulin, and you can see, how much one ingredient might affect your insulin. And you can compare also to glycemic load, which will show you on an intake model when you eat something compared to other things, how much that's going to affect you. So compared to, like, for example, total carbohydrates, amount of sugar, or how to calculate that in your food. The relevancy is that the more you affect your blood sugar, the more you're going to need to restore your electrolytes, and you're going to need to also you're going to need to balance your hormones, because, again, the more glucose production you have, the more B complex you're using at B1 especially, and the more you're going to contaminate. You have risk of contaminating your hydrating fluid. Things like sugar contaminating your hydrating fluid, preventing electrical conductivity and energy on a daily basis. So, okay, look at different sweeteners, for example, that might be in colas. So here's a sample list. It's not from highest to lowest, but if you look at a glycemic index to get a bit of scale, you'll see, a different range than shown, but it's useful. Okay, so maltodextrin is quite high up, and it's tougher than beer and alcohol, like the carbohydrate like alcohol, like beer. Sugar is quite low down. It's on the median part of the index compared to other things, and the lower down you get, the better it is for you to an extent. But you have to look at the source of the resource, so where it's coming from, how it's produced and manufactured, and the quality of those resources overall. Popular ones are things like xylitol in the health community, and if you want to actually look at some of those, you can look at that also up at that Keto website I showed you with Dr. Berg, right here. Okay, just look at it through the search icon. Next, you want to look at the acidity regulator. First, overall, regardless of which part of this we're looking at, the better the ingredients that you choose over time, the easier it is for your body, because you're going to start having a positive benefit compared to a negative benefit. And the more you have a positive benefit, the more you gain control. Will in nutrition is particularly focused on the use of nutrition to make those choices for you rather than yourself, because who you are is what's inside your body. So if you want sweet, for example, then you control it with having potassium. It's the same with other things. So increasing your amino acid levels would also help you, for example, control stress and control binge eating and all sorts of things. So when you're looking at anything to do with sugar or controlling the intake, that's a part of your the way you're managing your electrolytes and hydrating fluid, and microbiome especially too. You're going to want to be looking at resources that are basically giving you more of a positive benefit than a negative one. Okay. In this regard, you can understand sugar is irrational, like alcohol or smoking, because there's no positive benefit. There's no use, medically speaking. But from a social perspective, there's social utility. So people enjoy these things, and they share stories over these things and history, and these things can be important to them. Okay. So you have to weigh those pros and cons and decide what you want to do for yourself based on what it means to you. Acidity-wise, there's some serious problems with acidity and some nutrients, because it's counterintuitive. For example, citric acid or citrus is known by some people as lowering pH, but it in fact has a wave-like result where it lowers and then increases, like lemon. Lowers your pH, but then it pops it back up. So this natural state for human is a lower pH. And what happens is when you raise that pH, you have issues like reflux, GERD, and things which occur. And the same is true, if you have an issue with having too low of a pH. And so sometimes the results are counterintuitive and just requires some caution and consultation. So people often get those ones wrong, even medically speaking. At a clinic recently, I saw a nurse give sugar to a vomiting patient, and she was feeding Gatorade to the patient, basically. But the problem is that during emesis, the pH is you can see there was no reason from intake that was visible. So what's happening is that when there's nausea, there's a lack of nutrient control in the body. There aren't enough nutrients being consumed right now because nausea has to do with electrolytes, especially, and other nutrients that are needed. But when you feed the person sugar, the nutrients are depleted more by the sugar, by the way, and the body's wasting those nutrients to control the sugar and regulate it. Another thing that's happening with the sugar is that it's popping the pH up. So people think of sugar as acidic and lowering pH. But what it's doing is that it's raising the pH and making it too alkaline in the stomach. And as soon as that pH is too alkaline, that's going to open the valve, which controls emesis and vomiting in nauseous people. So, bad judgment call there by the nurse. Looking at acidity in foods is really important because having too much of something can make your stomach uncomfortable. Can result in you having to wonder, why am I making these choices over and over again, which are uncomfortable, right? So you can replace things that are really not great in your food and your drinks with drinks that have better ingredients so that you have better acidity regulation. For example, there are a lot of sparkling carbonated water beverages, which can be great for oxygenation with really healthy sweeteners that are not wrecking your electrolytes and your hydrating fluid and your microbiome, and also not messing with your acidity levels. You can even get carbonated sparkling water that tastes like Coca-Cola and it's delicious, but you simply have to find those options. Best flavorings would be natural flavor because it's the least risky one. But while people accept a lot of variety of flavorings, natural flavor tends to be the most a very accurate and very healthy version, though there is some level of risk, which is really rare. In terms of colorants, there are some issues with colors. Things like caramel color can result in some issues. I'll show you something really cool here. So you find a really good drink alternative, than something that's got tons of sugar in it, and you decide you want to use that instead. But you look at the list of ingredients and you see a coloring, and you think that it's not going to cause you any kind of issue. You're worried about phosphoric acid and different content, but you're willing to accept some of the trade-offs, for example. So what you want to do is you want to look up some of these different flavors to see, or different ingredients to see if there's anything which you might think can turn the benefit from what you want. For example, is it marginal benefit worth it, or is it not worth it? Okay. Caramel color, for example, has something similar that it does in the blood compared to sugar, which is that it glycates your protein. So when you have protein, you waste your protein because you get damaged protein. Glycated protein is damaged protein. And people have to fast up to 18 hours to start to cycle through those proteins. And those proteins stay in the body and they can never be used again for about 3 months until they're gone. And so sugar and stuff glycates the protein, and so does caramel color, for example. Let's look at some symptoms, for example, of glycated proteins. Symptoms of glycated protein. But here you'll see there are no direct symptoms in Google of glycated protein. Okay. Actually, these glycated end products can cause all sorts of problems. You see that they're markers for all sorts of diseases like diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, and aging. So, in fact, you can put this in a package together with things like sugar and stuff and bad intake, where you can see that these results from bad intake are, also being seen in 90% of chronic diseases, and not using these bad models of intake can prevent 90% of chronic disease, as well as help people recover from chronic disease on a regular basis. Okay, for that kind of information, you should definitely be looking at resource material, whether that's true from a clinical perspective. For example, using this YouTube here, Dr. Eric Berg or Dr. Ken Berry, as I mentioned. I'll put those in the link so you can look at the ones you want. But you can see here, you can see the systemic impact. So the fact that there's no direct symptoms of glycated protein, you might be looking at what's happening with glycated protein instead of glycated protein. Google's medical advice doesn't go beyond a generalist understanding. So if somebody wrote on medical practice or medical customs from a generalist perspective, that's probably all you're really getting from a Google search. I've known like masters and PhDs working. I have a PhD guy, for example, working on those AI programs, and he said like he's from a medical department at in the USA at a university, and he said they actually mistreated him, and they're not very smart, and they're doing a lot of bad stuff, like not doing a good job over there. And I gotta agree, when I was doing any medical work with them, they were definitely messing it up. And the review process is not awesome. They tried, and they did do some good stuff though on being objective from an academic perspective, but they're not integrating it yet. Okay, so you want to come here, take a look at some information on glycated end products. Anything you get from them from AI right now it's not trying to give you medical advice, and they know that. They're doing the best they can, and that's not going to happen probably for another, not now, over the next decade. They're currently paying tons of cash to people at a master's level to get that level up. But okay, so you can see how these glycated end products are kind of messing with the kidneys, eyes, heart, brain, and such. Okay, and you can put more work in that to see how not having these issues from a perspective, from your intake perspective, is giving you a comfortable life in comparison to having those the intakes that cause these issues from high sugar. But it's not always high sugar. Sometimes it's obviously the caramel color. Okay, that glycates protein too. Lastly, here I'm going to close off here on caffeine. Because removing sometimes it's not more complicated than choosing better intake than bad intake, and then over time the benefits outweigh the cost of the decision, and then you want to move on and make even better choices. Eventually, by using this model, you can easily decide if you want or don't want any of these products. From a clinical perspective, using American fasting in natural health, I would say that I have found this model, ketosis and carnivore model from Dr. Berg and Dr. Ken Berry, which will be in the links below, the best models. And they have a lot of clinical research which they offer for free to people or other research which they offer for free as well to their clients. People who just call them, they give it because they try to promote a positive health culture. So, at least in my experience, it's been that way anytime. So, oh yeah, lastly also with that one, just for moving on, is that if you want to quickly control those intakes, the best way is amino acids and nutrients. So what you want to do is you want to look up the list of nutrients, right, that you might find, like RDAs, recommended daily allowances. We'll use a Canadian government website for now for that. Just to first get a basic grasp of what needs to be inside your body on a daily basis. With a few things in mind. The first thing you want to think about is the vitamins, the minerals, and the macronutrient lists, which you just can take a look at and get an idea of what is a vitamin, mineral, nutrient. And then you want to think about who you are, your demographic, age, and what vitamin you're looking for. Okay, and that's going to be really typical basic stuff. Then remember that usual approach in North America is to reduce those those facts or that kind of information to basic models. How much of it looks like what kind of food that fits in what part of your hand, you know? How much dairy, how much meat, how much grain, and that kind of problem solving. And then you would benefit from looking at different food groups, again, from a ketosis-based perspective, from a keto-based approach, and realize how different extreme diets can help you to sort out that the body can exist anthropologically or ancestrally in one way compared to a modern human diet, which is anthropologically or ancestrally, we ate in a certain way because we came from a certain kind of place. So a keto diet would be like an agricultural kind of ancestral diet, whereas carnivore diet would be more of a hunter style diet rather than a gatherer or a farming kind of crop kind of farming diet. Going back again anthropologically and historically, you can see that there's a certain change after the hunter-gatherer era, where you see a lot more things like cavities and again, bone decay and other issues that would have existed based on the changes in technology and food gathering procedures. Okay, so after considering what those different diets look like, modern diet compared to ancestral diets, looking at those resources, you can compare how these extreme diets are, from a genetic perspective compared to a modern diet as well. But they are considered extreme diets. Then you can quickly consider that nutritional therapies currently offered in North America are mostly just for like emergency cases, people who need someone to explain things to them. So you should definitely use those resources, but also and get consultations through those normal means. But take management of your food intake in your own hands, because your long-term management is up to you. And getting consultation is great for 15 minutes or an hour, but over the lifetime of any person, it's not as much time as you're going to have to put into yourself by any standard. Okay, so with those concerns in mind, you can kind of choose a basic food model, and by choosing the basic food model, you can start to choose what things you're going to turn into a better kind of intake than other things. From pizza to what, or what kind of food to what. Things like healthy meats and salads, from normal beef to grass-fed beef, for example. You can look up things like that and make those choices. Because of that, you can generally have a concept that your body's going to have more nutrition and solve a lot of those underlying conditions or symptoms that you might consider as normal or socially, culturally relevant as who a person is or what a person would normally experience. You can go toward a paradigm where it's like, no, because I have healthy intake, I don't have any of that on a regular basis. And then with those basic concepts in mind, you have a generally, a healthy practice of self-management, and then you can think of some overall conclusions about how to, for example, control resources like high sugar colas or Pepsi. For example, you can use amino acids. With Dr. Canberra, he uses a beef, butter, bacon, eggs approach, which is a carnivore hunter diet, and the human diets are kind of like I rather use the word intake model, but diet's a very popular word. And the benefit there is that in a pound or 2 pounds of the meat with the 10 eggs or lots of eggs, and again the bacon and the butter, you get a lot of amino acids from the protein. So amino acids are a component of protein, and so you should look those up too on those sites that I showed you to understand those basic concepts. And so then you can see that amino acids are a component of protein. They are used in the production of certain vitamins, and like B3, and they are used in the management of stress, cortisol, adrenal fatigue. Okay, these are really important components of understanding why a person would eat when based on a fight or flight response, loss of control. The concept of losing will when eating comes from those underlying arguments, like that there's adrenal fatigue or fight or flight response or too much stress, things that have to do with the regulation of hunger and nutrients, and other kinds of things like hormones. Hunger is a fairly easy one because it's just an easy nutrient, but the tough one was the force feeding, which is like blood work. Things are blood, which is why does your body, which is react in a biomechanical way where you actually have to use your arms and reach those resources. Well, because you need to control, for example, stress. You need to control what's inside of your arm because you got to remember it's hydraulic function as well. Things like blood are involved, and you need to control what's inside the blood so it's healthy, and you need to have a reaction to those foods. So, like a potassium is for sweet, so you don't reach for sweet. If you take more potassium, you don't want more sweet. See, so you're not actually reaching for the sweet. So you can rule out that you're reaching for sweet. You don't crave sweet. People love ice, so they want to have the ice, eat the ice with everything, right? They want the ice in the drink, and they're going to eat all the ice after. This is a craving for iron, for example, which I showed you in the other video. And so the iron craving can be controlled. The iron craving it can be controlled by eating iron. So ice craving can be controlled. Eating ice can be controlled by eating iron. Something like eating meat or something like that. It's always best not to use supplements for iron, from what I hear. I don't really know about that much, so you can look at again the Keto site for that from Dr. Burke. If your soft drinks are something you're responding to because you're eating for example, you've had enough potassium, you've had enough oxygenation, but you need something cold, okay? So if you've had a lot of sugar, you're going to mess with your thiamine regulation, as I mentioned earlier. So if you have a lot of sugar, you basically want to control the direction of sugar intake to something more sweet, or as sweet, but not as sensitive, causing insulin sensitivity or things that can be disastrous, okay, to intake. So you eat a lot of sugar and then you have an issue with the microbiome, and that means you're depleting your thiamine. Okay, once you deplete thiamine, you're messing with thermogenesis, and so people might long for cold or hot, but then now cold is bad or hot is bad, for example, because thermoregulation is off. And so that can be an issue. And so sometimes temperature is not much more than needing adequate nutrient values. So you should look at what are healthy forms of thiamine intake. Synthetically speaking, thiamine intake is not that useful for long-term health, but it's really wonderful from what I understand anyway. But it's very good for quick management of addictive cycles, things like sugar, carbohydrates, things that can be really difficult to stop eating in large amounts. And so so drinking this cold as with a soft drink can deplete the thiamine or make it not available or not efficient. And so again, that would throw off thermogenesis, right? Hot or cold is bad, or both, or something like that. Okay, and so if you have a better regulated thiamine level through healthy intake, then it's natural. Again, the microbiome makes it for you often, a lot of it, but too much sugar again grows the microbiome too large, and then you have bad regulation of it because it won't be enough because it eats it. So okay, so at that point you can realize that sugar is going to not be a benefit to you, okay, in terms of enjoying the temperature of the drink. Another issue with temperature of drinks is going to be something as obvious as cold versus heat for other reasons. Cold is for de-stressing. It helps manage cortisol. So people might really benefit from a cold drink because they need to reduce cortisol. They need to control stress a bit. So they love that. But the question is, does stress get controlled through cold liquid, right? So that would be something to look into more. I love cold for stress management, but I don't know the extent to which cold will help stress management. I assume to an extent that it does. I don't really know that. Hot tends to be for relaxation. It helps relaxation rather than stress. So it can be or warm, right? And so warm drinks, drinks that people like warm can maybe they would like to relax more. So The same is true in the uses of hot and cold. The extent to which that helps you when you drink it, I don't really know. Okay, so sometimes it's obvious as looking in places that are more convenient. Last component to look at would be the caffeine content. So by having a healthy intake model, you can start to not only have self-control because you have more comfort and can start to go toward a marginal benefit that increases in terms of healthy intake, but you also increase the amount of amino acids you have, for example, and those amino acids will control stress, reduce adrenal fatigue, normalize that again, and do things that are basically assisting you controlling cravings. So more amino acids, for example, in the beef, butter, bacon, eggs diet is going to give you enough control over not only those mechanisms, but also of as well as cravings. So, for example, the L-tryptophan will help you control your cravings for many things, including bread and things like that. But that also goes toward increasing your serotonin and ultimately control of sugars as well. Especially for that one is good is the L-glutamine is good for that as well. And you can look at that up. Let's take a look at L-glutamine. They are safe in supplemental form, and they're very useful for people who are trying to increase the levels. But the easiest way to do that is Dr. Ken Berry's butter, bacon, eggs diet. Show you here. Because those resources are really healthy when you take it in a successful model. You use a successful model to take it, and then it's okay. But it's very unhealthy for you if you use an extreme diet method while eating lots of carbohydrates. Okay, that's always bad. Consistently. Okay, and then meat and such animal products are loaded with proteins, and it's not really the protein levels that you need to worry about, because high protein is an issue if you have too much protein. So the thing you're going to want to do more of is what is in the protein, specifically amino acids, right? If you're eating carbohydrates, they're just as insulin react. They make the insulin respond just as much as proteins do, high protein does. But when you're eating the carnivore diet without the carbohydrates, your body maintains its own glucose levels through neoglucogenesis, and it's a bit easier to process the carnivore diet actually. Okay. So again, look up those concepts here. And then down to the last concept now, the last thing to talk about item was caffeine. Caffeine is one of those weird things. It's shaped weird for where it goes. It fits into the adenosine receptor, but it doesn't fit in there right. It kind of just fits, and then it uses the adenosine receptor. When caffeine fits in there, again, caffeine seems to have many healthy benefits to the body. But what's going to happen is that the adenosine receptor is now used, and the neurochemical adenosine needs to find a spot. And what's going to happen is that the adenosine receptors are going to grow in number. They're going to start to grow the more caffeine you use. So over-adaptation on caffeine is something like when you have too much caffeine, it becomes useless. And when it becomes useless is because the adenosine receptors are going to keep growing more and more and more until there's enough for the adenosine to fit. And then after that, you're going to be totally fatigued and you're going to crash. While you're doing that, I mean, your REM cycles and all that is going to be interfered with by caffeine as well. And so from that perspective, you're also going to be in need of stopping caffeine for a few weeks or as long as it takes, depending on how long it's been since you've had a rest. And then your adaptive response to caffeine will go back to normal. Okay. So caffeine-wise, the best way to reduce caffeine is, again, through foods by taking high caffeine intake and reducing it through taking foods or substitutes to the same foods like coffee. Instead of coffee, take tea, in lower amounts of caffeine, and adapt that way. That was a typical response, but there's some issues there because caffeine can result in some issues because of forms of intake that it comes in. So first of all, moving food toward a healthy regimen is a good idea first as well, because that means that you're encouraging a positive benefit kind of approach to your intake. And then that means staying away from, no benefit foods or intakes, such as smoking, alcohol, or sugar, for example. Then let's see what else. Caffeine is also easier to quit if you find once you get to the decaf versions, for example, of those substitutes, like instead of caffeinated coffee, you use decaf. Once you use those decaf brands, you're going to need to find out which ones are non-addictive for you. So, for example, what's in the coffee is going to matter. If you have a high-quality coffee, it's going to matter. If you find a kind of coffee kind of stimulates too much addictive behavior, then you should inspect what might be inside of it. Remember, coffee is a carbohydrate, whether it's caffeinated or not. And caffeinated beverages are definitely diuretics, so they're going to deplete your electrolytes, and it's going to result in more cravings, generally speaking, as well. There's some people also get some satisfaction from that, so from coffee. So another thing to keep in mind is that caffeine doesn't affect everybody the same. So lots of people have caffeine and they're totally fine. Other people, 40 times more likely to be addicted by it, just by drinking it. So one person has a cup of coffee, they're good all day. Other person has to drink it compulsively all the time. And that's just not the same, not the same people, okay? You can look at, again, the website I showed you for more on YouTube, the YouTube and Dr. Berg and Dr. Kimberry to learn more about coffee. Also learn about decaf, especially here at Dr. Berg's site, because he has some great stuff on decaf as well. He goes into every detail about just whatever you might feel like, I think. Anything you might want to find. And I say that because I used his website for, I think, 1,000 hours. So, the other thing about caffeine is, caffeinated beverages is when you reduce from caffeinated beverages to decaf, you're going to have to remember that decaf versions can also have tannins, and that can result in thiamine depletion. So that causes irritation, things like, feeling bothered or worried can be triggered by that. So anything that goes from B1 thiamine depletion to, B2 depletion or other things like other B complex depletion issues, you're going to have to figure out, whether or not you're comfortable having that kind of decaf, okay? So something like, if it bothers you, you don't like it, try something else. Anything that affects one thing in a complex always affects the other things in the complex. So B is a complex. So if it affects one thing like thiamine regulation or thiamine amount levels, then you're also going to affect your other B vitamins. The same is true with vitamin C. If you affect vitamin C, you affect vitamin K, vitamin P, vitamin J. If the same is true in electrolyte, you affect your potassium because you're drinking caffeine, it's a diuretic. Now you're affecting your other electrolytes, okay? In the same complex, kind of like that, just like the other minerals, which is like, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, and that kind of thing. And when you affect those, they all have cofactors or vitamins or nutrients, minerals that they need to cooperate with. So, for example, the mineral calcium needs K2 if you're not going to get dizzy, right? If you get dizzy or vertigo, it's because you're affecting your calcium. You need to deplete your vitamin K. And then you're fine. So, people go through life thinking that dizzy is normal because they had a drink or something, but it's absolutely not that. It's really easy to fix. Often has to do with some nutrient deficiency stuff. Usually. In my experience. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of it. Those are just some easy pathways to start looking at how to control any of those kind of soft drink beverages. Because having compulsive need for them, first of all, is a mistake. Second of all, after you don't have compulsive need, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you can drink them. Okay? That's also a mistake. I know what that feels like too. That's for sure. Like root beer, for example. for me, the reason why I want to mention that after you don't have the compulsive need to drink soft drinks is that after you don't have compulsive need to drink soft drinks, you also have to realize the fact that you can drink them is an issue with the regulation of amino acids. So, for example, if I have a lot of like carbohydrates, I use for example like grains or something or pastas, then I'm definitely going to find it easy to eat things like drink things like soft drinks. Okay, to an extent, and the reason why it's to an extent is that your amino acid regulation is not going to be the same. If higher amino acid levels and better regulation of amino acid, then you actually cannot eat those things. You cannot willfully touch those things as if you want to eat them, because the body's response to those things is quite particular. Things like L-tryptophan is your response, is controlling your response for grain. Like other amino acids are going to, like L-glutamine is going to be controlling your response for sugar. I hope that's helpful for you. That's kind of the end of that. At this point, if you got the video, you got all the stuff you need here for controlling those soft drinks. Other than that, I wish you the best of luck. I'll never tell you because it's just on YouTube for you. Okay? Take care, and I wish you all the best.